Questions or observations?
We've been asked to pray regularly to be saved from the punishment of hell. At the same time, we are praying to be saved from the punishment in the grave. Why is it at two stages at two different places? Does it mean that the grave mentioned here is something other than the material grave where people are being buried?
Well, right. It is so obvious very angry. Ram has spoken on this subject, written on this subject, so has every catechist also. So it should be a common knowledge with every entity that whenever grave is mentioned in context with some punishment or some reward after death, it is not that grave that on this earth, but it is a term of Islam. And this fact is proved from many verses of the Holy Quran and many traditions of the Holy Prophet, that whatever is meant is not this grave, but a different thing. For instance, our Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam is known to have told us that whenever some person is buried, windows open into his grave. And if he is a pious man, a window from heaven is open, and if he is an evil man, a window from hell is open, and he receives gusts of the respective natures. So obviously, whenever you dig the grave again, or due to some natural calamities, sometimes the grave throw their dead out, and sometimes due to rain, people have to open up and reset things again. So never a window has been witnessed by any man. So our Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam could not be wrong. Only the understanding of the people is wrong who take him too literally. So similar evidence is abundant through inference of it, from which we can safely assert that the after death state of the spirit is not a fully developed state. As far as our consciousness is concerned, it could be a state of consciousness as compared to our consciousness. But the ultimate consciousness, the most defined type of consciousness, to which it is heading for an ultimate development, is quite a different phenomenon. You can't even conceive that such a refined consciousness could exist. So that is the difference between the final developed stage of the spirit and the stage where it starts the course of development, that is immediately after death. That period in between is called the period of grave. Now, for instance, the Holy Quran throws light on this subject at different places. Number one, the period of resurrection is, as I have told you earlier, is so far removed from this phase of human life on earth that it could be a billion years or less or more. But it's a very, very large period, big period between us and between the resurrection. And also we find that وَمَا خَلْقُكُمْ وَمَا بَعْثُكُمْ إِلَّا كَنَفْسٍ وَاحِدَةٍ, that your life after death and your raising from the dead will be of exactly the same nature as your first birth. Now, what is the nature of the first birth? The Holy Quran again refers to this phenomena by lighting our attention to the changes which take place within pregnant woman's uterus. And the embryonic stage of creation is referred to in particular. And it's pointed out that see how we give different shapes to the embryo until it fully develops and becomes a child. So if you see the similarity, you begin to see the similarity between the first phase of life, creation, and the second phase of creation, you will immediately grasp the whole idea that the beginning of the fetus has in fact so far removed in quality and in shape and in essence of life as one cannot believe that this could develop into a full developed child. So that child which is born and that fetus which takes its first seed, first embryonic stage, they are so far removed that as if they don't belong to the same thing. And similarly, if there is a similarity between the first creation and the second creation, the same ratio of difference should exist between the shape of our soul immediately after death and the shape of our soul at the time of resurrection. The ratio should be constant in both cases. Otherwise there could be no similarity. Ma khalqukum wa ma ba'thukum illa ka nafsin wahida. Allah tells us that your first creation and your second creation are to be studied like the phenomena of a single birth on earth. If you study that phenomena, nafsin wahida's creation, single person's birth, then you will understand both the phenomena. So as we know already what happens during this phenomena of individual creation, we should also realize what may happen after death. And the first lesson one gets is that after death, the spirit would be so crude in its form as if it has no bearing and no relationship to the shape it will have developed into at the time of resurrection. So that period of development is called grave. And again, why it is called grave? Because again it has a similarity of the child within the woman's tomb or uterus. Because it is also like a grave. Everything which is developing in there is developing in layer after layer of pouches, and whatever is imprisoned there is in a state very similar to that which you can visualize would be in a grave. So that similarity continues to hold in every respect. So the period of grave is a very long period of the development of soul until the soul is ready to take a new birth, and that birth would be close to the time of resurrection. And the time of resurrection, I said close, maybe I should have said at the time of resurrection. But that day of resurrection should be conceived as a very big period. People think that everything will happen within the day of which we have here. You know, for billions of people to have been examined and to have been rewarded according to their own actions, that 12-hour day is just not enough. It's enough for God, but not for the people to understand what's happening. So the phenomenon which is described in the Holy Quran positively refers to a day of much longer duration. Could be a day which has been described in the Holy Quran as comprising 50,000 years. So, in a period of 50,000 years, souls will be taking shape. The earlier souls perhaps will be taking shape earlier, or maybe those who are pious men, their souls would develop earlier than everybody else's, and so on and so forth.
One elucidation, sir.
Huh?
One elucidation I was reading. My notion, according to the inference from the Quran, the evolution of man's species from when he was the clod of earth and all the development described in the Quran, in my view, it is similar as it takes place, or was similar as it takes place in the embryo, in the 9 months, and then will it be the same, you have mentioned, for the soul to develop from the day of death to resurrection, and will the soul from the day of resurrection to infinity will also be developing in the same stages?
That I already said.
Yes.
That I have already said when I referred to the second verse of the Holy Quran.
Yes.
Kefa Yusavirukum or Yusavirukum? What is the exact verse? Fil Arham. Kefa, is it in right? क्योंकि हाफिज़ है युसव्विरुकुम है ना, ये युसव्विरुकुम फिल अरहाम में क्या पेशा? God gives you different shapes in the uterus as He pleases, and the attention of man is drawn to this phenomena. Now this is a very strange thing when you consider the time of the Muhammad Mustafa sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Then it looks so strange that such a verse should have ever occurred in the Holy Quran. Because to open the uterus and to see how different shapes are given to the uterus was something inconceivable in that time. It only became conceivable when the surgery developed into the present form of surgery. And previous to this, there was no concept of the uterus being the place or arena of the unfolding of the phenomena of evolution. That is exactly what has been referred to in the Holy Quran by the verse Yusavvirukum fil arham kayfa yasha. Because Darwin particularly pointed out to this fact. He said that millions or billions of years of evolution is repeated in miniature in the uterus of woman. And right from the earliest stages of development up to the final stages of man, whatever various species or order he has been through are repeated in very short terms, but a whole film of evolution is being unfolded in the uterus. And that is exactly what the Holy Quran is telling us. And when it says that if you want to understand the phenomena of resurrection or your second birth, second creation, we refer the first creation. We refer you to the first creation. Study that phenomena, and if you understand that phenomena, then it will be easier for you to understand the phenomena of the next creation. And that is kanafsin wahida, like the creation of a single person. That perhaps I didn't elaborate at that time. This is why you had to ask this question.
So with regard to the punishment, one at the day of judgment and one during this great period, what is these two types of punishments?
I was trying to focus on this during my discussion on the question previously asked. If you consider the birth of a child who is ill congenitally. And also consider what happens to that child within that uterus. He also suffers, but his consciousness is very vague. And that suffering is somehow conveyed to the mother's consciousness. And if it is an ill child, it is the mother who suffers more than perhaps the child itself. But that suffering of mother is a referred suffering in fact. You can't imagine how a child is suffering within the uterus, but you know that through the nervous system of the mother. What happens is, it is the suffering of the child which is translated into mother's suffering. And if that child is healthy and plays within the field available to it, then you know the mothers are very happy and they enjoy that situation so much. That is in fact the happiness of the child which is transferred to mother's nervous system. So through that we can make an inference that the consciousness of the soul will let it know and realize whether it is an ill soul or a healthy soul. If it is an ill soul, it could begin to suffer, like you suffer here on earth. Now, although the similarities between the uterus and the embryo and the future development of soul, yet it does not mean that the starting stages are exactly the same. They are not, of course. The starting stage of evolution falls much back in history, and it is a very preliminary state of life that we find taking shape on this earth. But the starting point of the soul development is the summit of that evolution. So the flag will be taken up for the new evolution, not from the same starting point, but from the end point of man's evolution. So the consciousness which will be found at the inception of this phenomenon would be much more clearer as compared to the consciousness of the child in uterus. But when you compare that consciousness with the ultimate consciousness which that soul will achieve, then the similarity is exactly evidenced, and you can say that it is a complete similarity in ratios, in comparisons. That similarity is complete, but not in that in such detail that the soul would again take its start from earth, clay, and go through all the physical phenomena which the body went through before. That is not what it meant. The stages, the similarity of development, the similarity of the beginning being so far apart from the end product, and similarity of the dissimilarity between the beginning and the end product. That is also a similarity of dissimilarity. How dissimilar the child is when he is given birth to the first second when it takes shape in the ovum. There is no similarity. So that dissimilarity will be repeated in the development of soul. The first soul which separates the body will be as dissimilar to the soul which develops on the day of resurrection, as the first embryonic stage is dissimilar from the final stage just before the birth or after, immediately after the birth. Yes, please.
What's the forgiveness of God coming to play?
Come there and ask on the microphone so that everybody understands your question, please.
So, I wanted to ask at what stage does God's forgiveness come into play?
Where?
In the system of spiritual evolution is after birth.
It will come to play, as it comes to play on this earth as well. You know, the Holy Quran refers to this phenomenon in the beautiful verse. The first verse is beautiful, but I mean, it's an outstanding verse that tells us that if Allah had not been kind to mankind and had not forgiven most of its sins, and if Allah were to be cognizant of all the follies or even the smallest follies of man, then Allah will destroy all life on earth as punishment. So that shows that it is the forgiveness of Allah which has carried the evolution through to this stage. At every time we make mistakes, and different types of life which existed before us, they also made mistakes. Yet the system of Allah is so great that despite our mistakes, we survived. Despite our ignorance, despite our respective follies in the sphere in which we were born at a certain stage, still Allah forgave us, and the system of survival was not adversely affected. Now this phenomenon could be understood by a doctor better than anybody else. This phenomena of forgiveness is found in every organ of the human body. It is not that type of forgiveness which you find in religion. It's an automatic scientific forgiveness in the form of law of nature and the provisions with which man has been provided. For instance, the system of sugar burning in body is such that you require a certain amount of insulin, and it burns the sugar as required, and then the production of insulin is stopped automatically and it keeps it balanced. Now if you overdo and start eating too much and put too much pressure on the system, still the human body is supplied with 7 times possibility. Or if you are negligent of your health and you injure the islands in which the insulin is produced, islands of gland, I mean, even if 1/7 of that remains healthy, still you will keep your system of production of insulin intact. This 1:7 ratio is found in so many other instances, and in some places it is even more. For instance, you are provided with 2 kidneys. If by your repeated mistakes and negligence 1 kidney fails, still you can survive without even noticing a change on 1 single kidney. If you still do not rectify your ways and behave properly and go on being cruel to yourself, and half of the second kidney is also destroyed, still you will survive, and half kidney will be enough. And even if 1/4 of a kidney is left, still it will provide all the needs of filtration that a healthy body requires. Now, you know Dr. Masood is a surgeon, famous surgeon of Pakistan, and a good Ahmadi. He is living now for many years on 1/4 of 1 kidney. The second is totally removed by operation, and the first one, let's call it the one, and this 1 kidney is removed 3/4 because it was all diseased. And he's living on 1/4 of kidney, and still he's operating on people and leading a normal life. So that is a ratio of 1:8. So in every phenomena of life, wherever you study it closely, you will find that we are so well cushioned that our mistakes are well looked after, and that they are barred from injuring us to the extent that they will create a threat to the existence of life itself. So the phenomena of evolution is cushioned from all sides, and that is forgiveness of Allah. So if Allah has been forgiving me to that extent, right from the start of the inception of life on this earth, then how can you expect Him not to be forgiving after that?
So it starts immediately after death.
Huh?
It starts immediately after death.
No, how do you know? not immediately.
That's what I'm from you.
Because this phenomena of forgiveness gives a canopy to life at every stage, even at the embryonic stage. So when you study the phenomena of the development of the fetus, then you will understand that even that development period shows evidence of Allah's forgiveness. I call it forgiveness in religious terms, and I know this is forgiveness and nothing else. But scientifically speaking, they would have different terminologies for this. Provision and cushioning and whatever they call it. But it is nothing but forgiveness of Allah. The Holy Quran tells us so many words. So, if Allah says it will be similar, your development, next development, would be similar to the first development, the forgiveness part will also repeat. In what form? We can't know until we die.
At the resurrection, what's the difference between first stage and the resurrection? Is there no continuous process?
Of course, there is no death as such. Change is there.
Except there are the grave and the resurrection. So what happens at the resurrection?
What happens at this birth of child, when a child is born? What happens? The same child continues. Your son?
My son.
Your son?
Is there
how to ask it from your wife.
is there a prophecy by the Holy Prophet or the Prophet yet to be fulfilled?
Prophecies, there's so many. For example, the Muslim of Islam told us that Ahmadiyya would spread like the particles of sand in Russia. So that is yet to be fulfilled. And also the ultimate victory of Ahmadiyya, so that Islam becomes victorious over all the rest of the religions. That is a prediction of the Holy Quran, plus the prediction of the Muslim of the rest of Islam, because it was to be fulfilled in this time. That is yet to be achieved. And you will only get closer to this ultimate fulfillment if you start working yourself, if you start individually moving in that direction. If MPs do not preach and wait for all the distance to be covered, one blue day morning, one fine morning, and expect that we will become victorious because it is predicted, this is just living in a dream. You will become victorious out of all proportion to the effort put in, that I agree. But not if no effort is put in. Some effort has to be put in the part of Ahmadiyya. And that is that each Ahmadi should become a missionary. If he becomes a missionary, however difficult and remote the ultimate goal may appear, this prediction will help us. And Allah's forces, unseen forces, will act in our favor and promote our efforts. with the result that inshallah one day all these prophecies will be fulfilled. So do your bit and expect the rest to be done by Allah.